Hey everybody, I'm back. Sorry about the delay. I had spring break. I wanted to actually figure out all this code, make sure this was going to be doable. Turns out it is doable. And we're back. The last tutorial I did a mock-up. What I want to do now is take the mock-up and get all of my user interface elements onto the screen using what's called the grid layout. So I've created these grid lines to help determine how I'm going to add the various items onto the screen. So we're going to have a Q label at the top. We're going to do what's called an QSvgWidget, which we're going to eventually replace with a better a web engine that will make that display a little bit better. You'll see what I mean when we get there. But for today, we're just going to create a scalable vector graphic widget. We're going to have a text input, a push button, and then we're going to have a series of icons. I'm going to add the icons in this tutorial, and basically this tutorial is all about each of the items, getting them in place, and then putting them into a grid layout. Okay, without further ado, let's go to our code. I already have the code here from last time. There is what the widget looks like. And this was just using the default one that was on PyQt6, right? Okay, so that being said, let's get rid of all the things we don't need. So I'm going to go ahead and go up here. First of all, I'm going to get rid of this widgets tool and the layout. And so we're going to keep the layout, but we're going to turn this into a QGridLayout. But let's get rid of all of these items we don't need. We're not going to use a lot of these. Okay, I deleted the items I'm not going to use, but we also need to create what's called the SvgWidget. This actually comes from a different library. It's part of PyQt6, but it's PyQt6.QSv, sorry, well, I guess I could have done it, SvgWidgets. QTSvgWidgets, import QSvgWidget. Okay, so now we've got that here. And we're going to change the layout from a VBox layout to a grid layout. So let's just get rid of that. Let's keep everything alphabetical. I like to keep it that way. G comes before L, so we're going to create the Q grid layout, comma. Okay, so we have all of our imports ready to go. And we're just going to keep that controller here. We're going to use that later on when we do a little bit of coding. All right, now we're no longer using the Q VBox layout, so it's the Q grid layout. Okay. All right, let's do a couple things here. We're going to add some items, and I'm just going to sort of get all the stuff in place, and we'll just code. I'll do a little bit of coding. Sometimes I'll code in fast motion. Other times I'll walk through the code. But really, I just want to be able to condense, keep this video relatively short. We're going to add a couple little items here. First things first, I'm going to save my changes. We run it. We're just going to get an empty window. So here we go. When I hit close and it reopens, see it's an empty window. Already we want this bigger. So I'm going to want it, I don't know, maybe about this size. I don't know what the dimensions are, but let's go ahead and try to set those. Set size. Oh, resize. I almost forgot. Okay, start with the 640 by 480. I'm old school. I still remember monitors that had that resolution. Yeah, I'm old. Run it, close it. That's not too far off. We're going to want it bigger eventually. I'm actually going to close this. I hate doing this. I like to actually, oh, see, we'd already ran it a couple times. I'm going to do this in run and debug mode. And what that's going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to, when I have it open, if I make a change, I just hit the refresh button. So let's say I want to make it taller, and I want to make it 640 by 580. And I just change the number, I hit refresh, it closes the window, reopens it, and there we have it. All right, we're just going to stick with this for now. Another cool little feature we can do here to our app, we've got some settings we can do here. App dot set style, I think it is. Yeah, set style. Watch this. I kind of like this little style here. I'm going to change this eventually, but I just did want to point out for those of you doing PyQt6, if you're tired of the usual layout, try the Fusion. and try resetting it. And now guess what? We got it in dark mode. Yeah, Fusion creates a dark mode. I really like that. That's kind of a nice little thing. We can also set default fonts and things like that, which we'll get to later. All right, we have a grid layout. Now let's just look at each of the items we're going to place. We're going to have a label, SVG widget. Okay. And each of these items we're going to place in the grid. So let me get all of the widgets ready to go. And for that, we're going to do this in fast motion. But before I do, I want to point out, I have gone and created all these SVGs, and I did it by going to the Dice Bear website. And if I can find it, and then I saved the files into the folder. You know what? I'll show you that real quick. Actually, I believe I showed this earlier on the tutorial. So basically, when you do a search, you can put in here your information and check this out. I'm going to add what's called a seed. So I'm going to put the question mark seed equals 100 visions guy. And let me show you bots, and you can see where all of my particular avatars came from. I always used my own seed. Okay, then I saved each of those files into a folder called resources. In the resources folder, there's an images folder. That's where I saved them all. Okay, so just so you can see what I was doing in fast motion is we created some widgets. The first widget is the label that goes at the top, and that's using a QLabel. And when you create a label, you just put in there in quotes what you want that label to say. And so we put that in there. That won't change. Then we wanted to create a scalable vector graphic. This is going to be the main widget that pops up in the window. And so we created a QSvgWidget for that. To create an SVG widget, basically you just have to say where a scalable vector graphic file is. So instead of actually just putting resources / images / main avatar, I decided to actually create it as a separate variable. And I made it self, and here's the reason why. In our program, we're going to want that main avatar to change. And that's going to be the file that we will, when we want to save it, we're going to actually try to make a copy of that. So for that reason, there's going to be another function or a method which will change the actual where that source happens to be. So if we can make that a variable that is accessible outside of this, by the way, this is the constructor method. All right, anything that we want to have a function dealing with it, we're going to need to add a self dot in front of it. So anything that's programmable, like the path to the main avatar widget. And then, okay, so that was the widget at the top. Then we added a little seed input, which will be that little input box where the user can type in text, and that will become the seed for customizing the widget. And if you ever see, a lot of times when you have those little input boxes, there'll be a little hint as to what you can type, and that's called placeholder text. So we actually added this placeholder text that will say enter text to customize. We'll take a look at that in a moment. You'll see. And then we wanted to create a QPushButton, and so we put a self.getAvatarButton equals QPushButton. Get avatar. So then that'll be the button, and the text on the button will say get avatar. We'll code that a little bit later on a later tutorial to tell it what to do when you push that button. Okay, then we have a series of icons that you probably saw me entering in fast motion. Okay, a couple things I wanted to point out. I made heavy use of copy and paste. I'm going to go ahead and save these changes here. It doesn't like right now that I haven't added anything to the layout, which I will do in a moment. I just want to point out that copy and paste is your friend, And one of the things that I did is I used this path here. If you notice, I was right-clicking, I was choosing copy relative path. And one thing you want to do is if you have a PC, you want the string to have a /, not a backslash. If it's a backslash, you need the escape. The way you do that, though, in VS Code is you want to make sure on your preferences, you set up settings. And in it, you can just type relative, and then it should take you to copy relative path separator. You want to make sure you're doing the /, not the backslash. Set that if you're on a PC so that when you copy the relative path, you can just paste it in. So we've added all of these files. Now what I want to do is add them into the layout using the grid model. All right, so let me just walk you through how I'm going to do it. Then we're going to do more fast motion because I think it's fun. Plus, I don't have a lot of time, and I know your time is important to you. In a grid layout, you can choose there are two main things you need to do. Number one, you need to, when you add your layout to a grid, you need to tell it what row and what column. And if you just do the row and the column, you give it 2 values, and when you add it, it'll just go into whatever slot that is. So 0, 0 would put the whatever you put in 0, 0 right there. It will only be in one sort of column if you don't specify. So you can give it 2 values, you can give it 4 values for placement. If you give it 4 values, you put not only is it starting location, but are you merging across rows? If you're in HTML, that's called a row span. In our case, you just type a number. So in this case, if it's only on one row, you just type 1. But in the label, we would give it 4 because we want it to span across 4 columns. Let me show you what that looks like for the label, and then we'll move from there. So we're going to add our widgets to the grid. So we're going to do layout.add widget, and let's start with the title label. Now we're going to put it in row. Now notice you already have the hints up here. Row 0, column 0, 1 row span. And we're going to give it 4 column span. We can do an alignment flag also. So in order to do that, I'm going to put this on the next line. I'm going to say alignment equals qt.alignment flag dot. It's align horizontal center. And we've added the widget now. Let's take a look at it and see what it looks like. Notice it's dead center, left to right, top to bottom. Let's do the fast motion part. That's more fun. Okay, I've made all my changes. It's time for the big reveal. Let's run it and what just happened there? Okay, we have a bit of a problem. All right, so here's the deal. We're having some issues with the columns for one. That doesn't seem to be working right. There should be more items here with these icons. The main icon is the wrong one as well. Okay, so this is what we got to do. First of all, I'm going to open up the folder. Here we are. And the main avatar was supposed to be the bot's avatar. So if I double click it, that's what I wanted the main avatar to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the folder here, and I'm going to take the bot's avatar, and I'm just going to do a file save as, and we'll call it the main avatar, and replace it. All right, we're going to go ahead and close this. Yikes. And let's run it again. And it's hard to see because all of this is off. I can tell you it was wrong before. Okay, so what's happening? All right, these files are way too large, but let's check to see if we are having a problem with our layout. Okay, so let's take a look at the grid and we'll compare it to our code and see if we got things right. Okay, so this was supposed to be pixel icon, should be the first one, 3, 0. And then it would be 3, 1, Lorelei, 3, 2, bots, 3, 3, shapes. Then it should be 4, 0, 4, 1, 4, 2, and 4, 3. And we're not able to see them because probably our sizing is off. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to figure out how to get all our sizing. But at the very least, I believe we got it working. It's really hard to tell when our scalable vector graphics are so large. So how about we do this? All right, we've got everything in place. We've got a grid. Let's do some customization. I'm going to have to save this for my next video. On my next video, I'll show you how to create a custom widget. And that custom widget will, one, be a fixed size. So we're going to like shrink them down so they all fit. They're all going to have consistent width and height. They're going to be a little taller than they are wide. And it's going to be a custom widget that will include the SVG and its label. And we'll do the customization. If we have a little time, we'll add a little bit more style to the overall look and feel of it. So stay tuned for that. And only then will we get really into some styling, some hover effects, as well as programming. So please stay tuned for those videos. Looking forward to it, and I'll see you on the next video.